Hi, it's Peter Schiff. This is Monday, October 5th, 2009. Anyway, I just got back from a CNBC interview. Earlier in the day on CNBC, Miro Rubini was on television basically talking about the recovery and the shape that the recovery would take. I'm on CNBC saying that there is no recovery, that what's happening in the U.S. economy is not a recovery because we're not recovering from anything. We're simply getting sicker. But of course, you're still getting a rally in the stock market, but that's because of inflation. It's not because that the economy is improving. Look at what happened today. The dollar got clobbered again today. The commodity currencies were particularly strong. The New Zealand dollar, Australian dollar were up about 2%. The New Zealand dollar, this was the highest close of the year. In fact, it looks like the Australian central bank is getting close to being the first central bank to raise interest rates. We'll see if they do that soon. But ultimately, that's going to be more problematic for the dollar when foreign banks are raising interest rates and the Fed is still dragging its feet, which it's obviously going to do. Gold was up about $15 an ounce today. It's still hanging out around that $1,000 mark, but I expect it to make a significant move higher almost any day. Silver was up 50 cents today. It's still, well below $20 an ounce, but I don't expect that to last for long. But I'm sure as the markets continue to move higher, people will try to confuse rising stock prices as some kind of sign that the economy is improving when it's not. There's still such a big misunderstanding of inflation. After I finished my CNBC hit, when I left the air, one of the other guests or one of the regulars on the show, Fast Money, mentioned that one of the bright spots of all this unemployment is that it keeps a lid on inflation. No, it doesn't. In fact, because we have all this unemployment, the Fed is going to create even more inflation to fight it. It's going to be more aggressive with the stimulus, and it's going to keep rates lower. Ultimately, that's going to cause even more unemployment, and of course, that is more inflation. But you still have this belief, which is from this Phillips curve, that there's some kind of trade-off between inflation and unemployment. There's not. In fact, it's the opposite. If you look at long-term correlations, countries that have low inflation tend to have low unemployment. And countries that have high inflation have high unemployment. Unemployment is not the antidote to inflation. We need a sound currency. We need a central bank that has the courage to raise interest rates. And if you want to have falling prices, what we need is productivity. We need low regulations and low taxes so that business and workers can be more productive, so that we can produce more things, so that the prices will fall. It's got nothing to do with unemployment. In fact, it's the reverse. And also, I want to mention a little lesson in politics to show you how ridiculous politics can be and how trivial. I did an interview with the Washington Post, and you can read that interview online. I think it's a pretty good interview, actually. But at one point in the interview, they asked me about my candidacy, and and my becoming a politician, and I try to describe it by using the example of somebody who enlists in the Army. And I mentioned World War II, that there are, a lot of people who work in the military who are career military. They spend their entire lives in the military. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm glad that we have officers who have made the military career. But then you also have people who enlist in the Army. They sign up for a tour of duty. They interrupt their careers and they go into the Army. That happened a lot during the Second World War because we had a real cause worth fighting for. And a lot of people, a lot of professionals left their careers to join the military. It wasn't just a bunch of kids out of school. There were people that left businesses, people that left professions. Certainly a lot of doctors became medics. There are a lot of Hollywood actors that enlisted in the Army in World War II because there was a reason to do that. And what I said in the reference is, I'm doing something similar, and I actually mentioned that I'm not comparing myself as far as doing something heroic. I'm not risking my life. I'm not going into a battlefield. But the point is that I'm not a career politician, just like the people who enlisted in the Army in World War II were not becoming career military. They saw something worth fighting for, and they interrupted their career to fight for it. Well, I also see something worth fighting for. I'm fighting for my country. I'm not a politician, but I want to help solve these problems. I know that our problems can't be solved by career politicians because solving these problems means risking that you don't get reelected. And career politicians just can't seem to do that. They always seem to put their career first. I don't want to do that. I want to go to Washington to put the country first. And I think you can only do that if your goal isn't to perpetuate your own career. So I made that analogy to World War II people signing up. Now, of course, now all of a sudden, all over the blogosphere is Peter Schiff is comparing running for the Senate to fighting Nazis. And now there's all these articles about how I fancy myself a Nazi fighter. One of these blogs, a left-wing blog, actually has an art. The headline of the story is, "Did Peter Schiff call Chris Dodd a Nazi?" Now of course, there's nothing. Nobody could possibly read this interview and think that that's what I was talking about. I mean, nobody could possibly draw that inference. It's clear what I was talking about. But obviously, the people who were putting this spin on what I said, they don't care about what I said. They're trying to find a way to make me look like a nut, to make me think that I'm a Nazi fighter, right? And even the Hartford Courant ran a story about a speech that I can't attend. There's a gathering of candidates. Unfortunately, I have a prior commitment to speak at a conference in New Orleans. And I just recently announced my candidacy, so I had some prior commitments. I'm trying not to make more of these speaking arrangements, but I want to live up to my prior commitments. So I've got to be in New Orleans at the investment conference down there on Thursday, so I missed this event. And the Hartford Courant says Peter Schiff, who likens his campaign to fighting the Nazis, is going to miss it. Obviously, I didn't liken anything to fighting the Nazis. What I said was that, like the people who left their career to fight Nazis, I'm leaving my career to go to Congress. I said there's nothing similar between going to Congress and fighting the Nazis. It's completely different. The similarity is that I'm not joining the Army to stay there for 30 years and collect my pension. I'm going to Congress to stay there for maybe a term and do something that the career politicians refuse to do or are incapable of doing, and so I'm going to do that myself. Now, you would think the reporter from the Courant, right? They can read this because obviously a lot of these bloggers, they just write Peter Schiff compares running for Senate to fighting Nazis. They don't actually look at the actual context of the statement. You would think that the reporter from the Hartford Courant could give me a call and say, "Hey, Peter, did you really say that you thought you fighting running for office was like fighting the Nazis? You really compare yourself to a soldier?" And I would have said, "No, of course not. That's not what I meant. That's not what I said." But they didn't want clarification. They just want to go with this. There was another statement I made in there that they also kind of blow out of proportion. Is I had read something that the average senator spends something like 90% of his time trying to get reelected. Fundraising, doing things that facilitate his reelection. So I jokingly said to the reporter, "Well, since I'm not going to be doing that, right? I'm not going to spend any of my time worrying about getting reelected. Well, I'll be like 10 senators because I'll be able to devote 100% of my time to trying to solve this problem." And I think that also came up to one of his questions that, well, how are you going to make a difference? You're just one guy. How are you going to change anything? And that's where I said, well, I might kind of be like 10 guys because I'm not going to be spending all my time trying to get reelected. I'm actually going to be trying to solve all these problems that the other senators helped create. Anyway, I don't know if anybody happens to search on the internet and you happen to read some of these stories about Peter Schiff, the Nazi hunter. Peter Schiff says Chris Dodd is Adolf Hitler or something like that. You might want to make a comment and remind the readers of those blogs and the writers of this material what was actually said. But who knows? If this is the best they got, if this is how they want to attack me and marginalize me, good luck. Because if that's all they've got, I think they're going to be surprised at what I've got to come back with. Anyway, that's it for everybody for today. Have a great day. I'll be back again soon.